Welcome back to Multiversal Studios. This is a breakdown of episode 8 of Yu-Gi-Oh Capsule Monsters, so if you haven't already, go check out the remaining episodes, which will be linked in the description below. Now, this episode is called Fruit of Evolution, and one of my personal favourite episodes. I think it's just the perfect balance of simple and fun to watch. Now before we jump into the breakdown, let's give this video a like. Alright, let's jump in. Now the next challenge is surprisingly in a pleasant location full of fruit like apples and bananas. Now whilst Joey was scoffing his face, one of the fruits turned into the scroll, detailing their next challenge. It read, choose the apple that gives you a raise and offer it up in the secret maze. Now in the forest full of apple trees, it was pretty much impossible to find the right apple mentioned in the scroll. Now as they are searching for the apple or trying to think of a way to do this, they actually reached the end of the map. So basically, the game had transported them somewhere, but had limited the size of the map in order to make it more manageable. And when they stick their heads out of the far reach of the map, all they see is shadow. Now as they continue their search for the apples and this maze, Tristan actually finds a giant melon and says this.
I was the president of the National Melon Lovers Fan Club for 4 years!
Not something you want to say out loud.
Now, is this canon? Because if it is, I need to do a video on Tristan, because there's definitely more to the character than meets the eye. Now, the melon actually turns out to be the Petit Moth, which is kind of weird since on the actual Yu-Gi-Oh card, it actually doesn't look like a melon. Now this Petit Moth heads underground, leading Yugi and his friends to what looks like the actual test area for the challenge, as there were 3 glowing golden apples, which references the scroll. Apples that give you a raise, which means eating them gives you a boost of strength, and by the title of the episode, will probably lead to evolution. Now as they make their way underground, a maze suddenly appears out of nowhere, which again makes sense as the second part of the scroll talks about offering up the apple in the maze. So the assumption being that escaping the maze and offering up the apple means the challenge is completed. However, this maze separates everyone inside, leaving Yugi and Grandpa and everyone else to fend for themselves. Now in order to escape the maze, everyone has a different technique. Tristan draws a picture of himself on a wall so he knows if he's walked by it already, in case he goes in like a circle. Joey draws a map on a piece of paper in order to help him maneuver around the maze. Am I the only one that wonders, where do they get the pens and paper from? I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh characters have an unusual ability where they can spawn out a pen out of nowhere. Just like in episode 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, where Taya brought out a pen to draw the friendship symbol. I must be like the only one who never carries a pen. Do you guys find that weird as well, or is that just me? Now Joey realizes something unusual whilst eating the fruit he had taken earlier from the forest. The fruit had a weird effect on him, even making him smarter. I feel like all the fruit in this place has a certain ability. Now as Tristan loses hope in the maze, he actually comes across a capsule monster. And it actually ended up being Shovel Crusher, which is an absolute tank of a monster. Now I feel like last episode, Tristan received Thunder Dragon, which is a badass Yu-Gi-Oh monster, and to give him Shovel Crusher so soon, I feel like they're trying to make up for only giving Tristan Thunder Kid for the first 6 episodes. Now Taya actually has one of the worst experiences in the maze, and is attacked by Yugioh, which is actually one of the scariest spider looking Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And before Taya could defeat it with a Dark Witch, the Yugioh actually snatches the capsule from her hands, leaving her only with the happy lover. Now luckily for Taya, she also gets a new capsule monster, which is called Seiyaryu. Honestly, I think I butchered that name. Let me know in the comments if I did. Now this is a badass dragon monster, but I do feel like they're just throwing capsule monsters at people in the last few episodes. But I'm not complaining because Taya and Tristan deserve it. And with a new monster, she obliterates the Yugioh. Now Joey also comes across a monster in the maze, which is a Battleox, which almost immediately gets run over by Tristan's Shovel Crusher. Now being alone and hunted in a maze by monsters must have been terrifying, but due to Tristan's Shovel Crusher literally crushing the walls of the maze, they eventually managed to reunite, purely from the damage and noise this creature made. Honestly, Tristan was the MVP this episode. He literally saved them. Now they eventually managed to head back to the location where the golden apples were originally. However, there was something strange, because one minute they were on the back of the shovel crusher, and the next moment we see Joey, Taya and Yugi on the ground, whilst Tristan and Grandpa were missing. It turns out Tristan is unable to control his creature, and it wouldn't stop, and it kept crashing into walls. Now what I find weird is, if Joey, Yugi and Taya managed to get off the back of that monster, how did Tristan and Grandpa manage to stay on? I sense another poor way to get rid of two characters out of the next action scene. Now when they look up at the apples, they actually notice that one of the apples had disappeared and was eaten by the petit moth. And what was left of the petit moth was a cocoon of evolution. And once the cocoon hatched, it gave birth to the great moth. Now in order to get to the apples, they had to destroy the monster, and due to Taya, Joey and Yugi all attacking the great moth at the same time, they managed to overpower it, but then it evolved again into the ultimate great moth, which means one apple was able to evolve the petit moth multiple times. Now eventually Yugi discovers this and eats the second apple, leading to his own dark magician evolving into the magician of black chaos. And after fusing with his new and improved monster, Yugi was just too much to handle for the ultimate great moth. Now I've always wondered what would happen if a monster that didn't have a natural evolution ate one of the apples. Like for example, if Joey's Red Eyes ate an apple, it would probably transform into the Red Eyes Darkness Dragon. But what if a monster like the Flame Swordsman, or like Kuribo, something that doesn't have a natural evolution, would we see the birth of a new Yu-Gi-Oh card? Now since there were 3 apples, one was eaten by the moth, and the other was eaten by Yugi in order to match the power of the ultimate great moth. The last apple was actually the apple they had to offer up in order to pass the challenge. So if they had eaten all 3, they would have failed. Now in this episode, 2 of the side characters, Tristan and Taya, received some big monsters, and Yugi got the biggest power up, which was the evolution into the Magician of Black Chaos. Now I have to say, they did Yugi dirty with those shoes. It just looks so silly. But I do feel like since they have just completed the 4th challenge, they're now giving everyone a major power boost, as they are now on their 5th challenge, which will probably be the most difficult. Now guys, this is the end of the breakdown of episode 8. Tomorrow will be the breakdown of episode 9 and 10, due to the fact that the 5th challenge is broken into 2 parts. So I will be covering both episodes tomorrow, so stay tuned. Until next time guys.